You're listening to Now I've Heard Everything. Conversations with the icons of our time.
The fact of the matter is that if the pill had not existed, there would have been a lot of unplanned pregnancies, a lot of illegal abortions, and with all the terrible side effects that went with it.
Carl Djerassi, the father of the pill. Today on Now I've Heard Everything, I'm Bill Thompson. It was in the early 1950s that a young pharmaceutical chemist led a team that actually created something that would change the entire fabric of our society. His name was Carl Djerassi. He was an Austrian-born Bulgarian American who led the team that came up with the oral contraceptive that became known as, and in fact still known as, simply the pill. In 1992, Djerassi wrote a memoir, a book called The Pill, Pygmy Chimps, and Degas' Horse. The book was a reflection of the fact that his life was more than, he said, just white lab coats and experiments. And that's when I had the chance to meet him. So here now, from 1992, Carl Djerassi.
It's not a conventional autobiography of starting with I was born on this and that day. It's really a collection of memoirs, and writing enough of them and then sort of building bridges between them. It's about as complete an autobiography as I'm willing to write, given a certain element of discretion and shame and embarrassment, etc.
I gather that there's very little about you that is conventional, let alone the autobiography.
Well, that may be true.
In fact, I dare say it strikes me that it would be fair to say that you revel in unconventionality.
That may also be true.
Where does the title come from?
Well, I think I really wanted to indicate that scientists can be, I think, as broadly diverse people as other creative individuals, even though we are usually assumed to be, just white, lab-coated individuals working in an ivory tower and incomprehensible languages on topics that are very esoteric and have very little to do with everyday life. And certainly in many scientists' lives, I think particularly in mine, perhaps the pill is a good example. It's had perhaps as much a societal impact as most scientific and technological development.
There is a stereotype, is there not, of scientists that many people in the lay public see scientists as these white lab-coated individuals who, with equations on the blackboard and beakers and test tubes and microscopes at hand, come up with new inventions that they then leave to the rest of us to figure out how to wisely use.
Yes, but you see, there is perhaps one advantage of mine. I've really led very much of a bigamist, if not polygamist life, most of my life, and that I've worked in both industry and academia simultaneously, running a number of companies. So I was been very much interested in the ultimate practical application of some of the scientific work, and I've always been interested in societal implications of it. So I would say, I fall into that category. The other one is, you made a very good point about the public's perception of what people look like. This is why lately I've started to write fiction in a genre that I call science in fiction, which is to be contrasted with science fiction, in that everything in science in fiction, the emphasis on in, is either true or at least plausible. And in it, what I'm trying to do is illustrate the behavior and culture of scientists, about which people write very little. They write about scientific discoveries, but not really how scientists live. And I thought, in this instance, autobiography is also a form of fiction. It's a form of automythology, but still it also describes the behavior and culture of a scientist, something that most people don't know very much about, because only scientists, I believe, really can write about this.
Is it your fate to be remembered someday? Someday somebody will write an obituary about you in the New York Times. We hope not anytime real soon. Is it your fate to be known as the father of the pill, inaccurate as that may be?
Well, first of all, fate, I don't consider this a pejorative, although I suppose some people would call it that. But quite frankly, I would rather prefer to be called the mother of the pill. And I'm saying that is because nothing can be born without a mother. And that's true of any drug that does not exist in nature. And of course, this is one that we invented and synthesized. And that is, you first need a chemist to synthesize the substance. Only then can the biologist try it in animals, and then you need a clinician to see whether the animal experiments are translatable into humans. Well, this is why I think the chemist is the mother, the biologist is the father, and the clinician is the midwife, so to speak. And you clearly need more than one person or one group. I mean, I really say that mother meaning the chemist in the generic sense.
Yet it also does imply, perhaps a tad unfairly, I think you point out, that you were the sole inventor of the pill.
Yeah, there's no such thing. I mean, no person is. We have this desire to always credit major discoveries, particularly in science technology, one person. That hardly ever is the case, and certainly is not the case here.
You said a moment ago that you do worry about the societal impact of what you do as a scientist. Did you realize back in 1951, was there any way that you could have comprehended the enormous impact that the pill would have?
No, of course not. I think no one did, and at that time we hardly knew that this would be the only or the major use for it. You want to remember that progesterone, the natural female sex hormone, was used therapeutically for a number of things at that time. It was used in the treatment of menstrual disorders and was used in the treatment of infertility in particular. So we were set out to try and convert the natural sex hormone into something that's orally active, because the natural hormone is not. It would have to involve injections, and accomplish this. Now, well, one of the functions of progesterone is also to be nature's contraceptive. And women do not get pregnant during pregnancy. So here we suddenly had synthesized something that a woman could take by mouth and also not become pregnant. But no one, I think neither physician nor anyone else, who assumed it would be accepted that rapidly. And it was primarily women who, I think, made that decision, because I think the liberating influence of something they can take in private without anyone's knowledge, where they are completely in control of the thing, and where, for the first time, you're separating contraception from sexual intercourse, which was another very, very important development.
Many people have ascribed many things to the pill, that it was the precursor of the sexual revolution, that it was perhaps the cause of the sexual revolution, and that it has changed our entire attitudes about conception. Can you go too far in that direction and ascribe too many things to the pill and its effects?
Well, of course, it's an experiment and it can never be redone, so you can't really prove it. As I say in my book, I believe that the pill has expedited the sexual revolution. I do not really believe that it has caused it. If you want to remember when that happened, it really was in the 1960s. At that time, a lot of other things happened, including the entire flowering of the drug culture. And that certainly also had an enormous impact on sexual behavior. So did the entire rock music scene, if you want to put that. Now, I think what the pill has done is liberated women, or really couples. It has made the sexual revolution, I think, a more pleasant one, in my opinion, and a less dangerous one. The fact of the matter is that if the pill had not existed, then you would still have had many of the things that occurred in what we call the sexual revolution. I think there would have been a lot of unplanned pregnancies, a lot of illegal abortions, and with all the terrible side effects that went with this.
You were a very young man in 1951 when the pill was invented. How do you follow up an act like that? What's going through a 28-year-old mind when you say, is this my zenith? Is this the best I'm going to do?
But you see, scientists don't look at it this way. Scientists have, first of all, no historical sense, I think, personally. They always think that the thing that they're just doing is the most important thing. And I was doing a lot of science subsequent to that, I considered very important, very exciting. So I always thought that whatever I was doing at the moment was perhaps the most important thing. Now, if you ask me what is the most important thing scientifically I've done, I do not believe that is the synthesis of oral contraceptives. I've done a number of things that I think are much more important. However, if you're talking about the societal implications of my scientific work, that clearly is number one. And that doesn't happen very often, that one, in fact, can have that impact on society. You know, I've discovered a number of other drugs, or synthesized a number of other drugs that millions of people have taken or are still taking. But it doesn't have quite that impact. Curing a disease is not the same thing as just as developing a fundamentally new contraceptive.
Yeah, I was going back to the public's perception of science and scientists. it would be hard in most people's minds to think of something in your long and illustrious career that has topped the pill.
Pantyhose. Many women will tell you that certainly liberated them to a considerable extent, but I'm being slightly facetious.
That would do it. What makes a scientist turn from a hard scientist to a soft one, to use your terms?
Tell you, I cannot really tell that easily because I don't really know a tremendous number of people in my own discipline of organic chemistry who fall in that category. Organic chemistry is one of the hardest disciplines with some of the highest intellectual borders. I'm the only person in our department who, for instance, teaches in our feminist studies program at Stanford. I'm the only person in chemistry who teaches in a program called human biology, which is a very important undergraduate major at Stanford, which covers people from a lot of disciplines, as the name implies, deals really with the human being. I would say it is generally either it is an innate societal concern, which may be one thing, but that usually means that people then focus on that rather than on their science. You have to work in a scientific area which has just overwhelming impact of this type. And a good example, I think, some of the people who really were involved in the initial stage of the genetic revolution. If you think about people like Paul Berg, a person who won the Nobel Prize for this, and he was one of the leading scientists who called together a group of scientists who said we have to think about the societal implication, the dangers, the inherent dangers of the work we're doing on genetic engineering and so on, and do we in fact have to police ourselves? That is one of the first times when scientists decide to do it themselves. Another illustration is really what happened during the atomic bomb. Immediately thereafter, physicists suddenly really discovered their social responsibility, and Oppenheimer would be a very good example. Many of the people who became very active in the nuclear disarmament field were in fact originally physicists involved in that particular area. I think you have to be touched by the social implication of your work and perhaps be surprised about them initially. Few people, I think, anticipate them way in the beginning.
But if you're speeding toward something inevitable that you may not even be able to see clearly, focus on what, again, to use your example of, say, genetic engineering, you know that you're speeding toward some reachable goal, but you're not quite sure what it is. Can you slow that down, even voluntarily, by saying, whoa, let's go more slowly until we figure out what's going to become of this in society? I
think probably not. And I can well understand that to a layman this sounds like a terrible answer, because they, of course, visualize scientists as being really potential Frankensteins or Dr. Strangeloves. This, incidentally, is why I've started to write, as I told you, fiction, dealing with the realistic behavior and cultural and intellectual motivation of scientists, to indicate that there are human beings with their pros and cons, but then on the whole, that is, you can have potential Frankensteins in everything. You can have them, of course, in politics. You can have them certainly in the military. But I would say the reason why I gave that answer by saying it's probably not is that you get so infatuated by the intellectual pursuit that is sometimes overriding.
Which brings us back to the stereotype that people see of be they atomic scientists or weapons designers or people working on some new genetic engineering or the pill, people inventing something in a laboratory and saying, there it is, okay, you people find out how to use this and use it wisely, and I'm going to move on to my next award-winning.
You're right, but I also want to tell you, I draw a major distinction between weapon designers, which is one group, and people who work on some new drugs, and I really put myself in this category. I, for instance, have never accepted any financial money from the Defense Department, anyone like this, because I feel very strongly that I'm not interested in this type of research. And I really believe in the whole people who do work on medicinal research or medical advances have on the whole really the good in mind that these things will cause, and the motivation is, I think, a very positive one in this case, and is likely to therefore to interest you more in the context of practical applications. I mean, anyone working even in fundamental biomedical areas is in the end interested in the possible application, even though he or she may not actually implement it.
Carl Djerassi died in 2015. He was 91. Now, you can get a copy of The Pill Pygmy Chimps and Degas Horse by Carl Djerassi by tapping the link in our show notes or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you'll also hear my 2007 interview with the man who led the team that decoded the human genome, J. Craig Venter.
I thought science was about the pursuit of truth and asking questions about life and trying to answer them. And I've tried to stick to that pretty much my whole career.
And my 2002 conversation with the man who discovered the double helix structure of DNA, James Watson.
I didn't want to just be known for the double helix. So before I made the discovery, no one thought I was going anywhere. And afterwards, I certainly went nowhere.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything right here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, we'll get an inside look at what it's like to be the wife of a coach of a major college basketball team, an award-winning coach, an award-winning team, a high-profile job, and she was just the lovely wife. My 1994 conversation with the wife of Notre Dame basketball coach Digger Phelps, Teresa Godwin Phelps.
A lovely wife is that phrase that you hear all the time that sports announcers invariably use. There's so-and-so's lovely wife in the stands. It's always lovely wife. It's one word, lovely wife. I use it sarcastically to talk about the stereotype that's attributed to coaches and athletes' wives.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.